Welcome again. Welcome to this next video lecture. So in previous video lecture we studied about the styles of learning and problem solving and the hemispheric reference preferences. So what is the style of learning? This style of learning we have learned that is imaginative, analytic, common sense and dynamic. And let me clear that the video lectures that we are studying here, you should be understood the previous video lecture, and the next video lecture is dependent on previous one. So if you miss any video lecture, you will not understand the next one, and it will happen in forthcoming videos also. So stay on video links whatever those are shared. Don't miss any video lecture, because the contents in every lecture, which is very holistic, which is very perfect, this information is prepared by IIT professors, and those things we are going to study, because the name of our subject is business communication, but actually its original name is international business communication, and this course is available on GNPTL, but somehow it is not got as it is. Okay, whatever material I have collected, I'm sharing with you. Okay, and if you got any material from NPTL, then you are welcome. It is beneficial for you also. Okay, so you may observe throughout the video lectures, you might have observed somehow it is the difficulty level is very high. Okay, and if you have full concentration on these video lectures, then you will understand. Okay, so again it is a distance kind of learning, it is online learning, you are studying online videos. So keep in mind that don't miss any video lectures here. Okay, so let us move to the next point, that is Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Okay, we are studying the point thought and speech, thought pattern and speech, and in this video lecture we are going to study the content that was we that that you want to discuss here, that is Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So it is the other important concept in the class today, that is Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So mm, SAPIR is not pronounced as sapphire, it is sapphire. Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And according to this hypothesis, what we think about is strongly influenced by the language we think in. Means we are influenced by the language we think in. We think our language, we think words. While thinking, we collect the words. Now, this is another interesting concept. What we think about is influenced by the language we think in. Okay, means while thinking we use particular language. If you think in English, you can speak easily. If you think in Hindi, you will speak Hindi easily. If you think in your mother tongue, you will speak easily. And the reason for that is that when we think, we use words. And where do these words come from? The language that we use, and these words come from the vocabulary that we are using. So everything revolves around words, and just imagine if by some work of fate or by some accident people lost their ability to identify words. Means any accident, they lost their ability to identify words. It has happened. It is called aphasia. Our vocabulary is so important to us, and the vocabulary is a tool that we use to identify things around us, to understand the world around us, and our vocabulary limits what we can think about and express. So now the applications of Sapir-Whorf hypothesis to the business environment, how people conceptualize their environment, is determined by the language they use intrapersonally and interpersonally. For example, the explanation of a concept like ERP, it is enterprise resource planning, or jargon, or any jargon for that matter, someone not familiar with it would be probably Greek. So, what do I have to do? I have to explain this in a language that they understand. For us, the you may have a plastic thing while using a computer, okay, that is a mouse. So now about 25 years 20 years ago, if somebody said talked about a mouse, we would think about our little furry pest rodent running up and down, people screaming, and that is what a mouse meant. That was our vocabulary was like. We had no idea about words like the internet, Google, Yahoo, search engines, HTTP, HTML. All those terms were not even invented, say, 25 years ago. But now we use them in the normal language of communication. And how has this vocabulary expanded? This has expanded because of the need that has come up. We take one word and try and find more meanings of that word, and we develop a new connotation of the same word, just as we did in the case of this mouse. Okay, हिंदी में बोले तो चूहा. It is like a mouse. It is like a chooha that runs from one point to another. It just goes from one part of the screen to another really quickly. It has a tail like a regular mouse does, and so it is got a cute little shape. It is almost the size of a normal field mouse, or a small house rats, or bigger mice, or smaller. So we have these new terms, and our vocabulary has now expanded. And the application here is that when people are not very familiar with the language they are conducting business in, they will understand the concepts in a manner that is different than the manner in which native speakers of the language use it for business, interpret the same concept. So, if English is a second or a third language for you, then the terms that people use may not be very familiar. The connotation may not be very familiar to you. I will give you an example, and I will use the same example next time in the next class when we talk about translation. But just to give you an idea, a word like snow, we talk about the snow, and for people who are not familiar with the snow, snow is something that falls from the sky instead of rain. It is this white, powdery, very cold substance that falls from the sky. But snow is snow. And then when we talk about people who live in the snowy regions, so for us, snow is different from slush, which is different from sleet, which is different from hailstorm. So it is rain, and then we have hail, and then we have snow, and we have sleet, and we have slush, and we have black ice. Black ice is the dirty ice that gets packed on the road with the pollution and with the effluent of the vehicles on the road, and it causes a lot of accidents. And then we go to the Eskimos, and Eskimos have so many different words for snow. They have a different word for falling snow. They have a different word for snow that falls quietly as opposed to snow that comes along with snowstorm. They have a different word for large flakes. Okay, they have a different word for small flakes. For us, snowflakes are snowflakes. So uh, this is how the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis influences how we do our business. The language that we use to express ourselves define what we talk about. I will give you another example There is no word for divorce in the Hindi language. So when we talk about divorce, we talk about the end of marriage. And the end of marriage means that the court gives you a piece of paper that says you are no longer married. But in cultures where the divorce is common, where the word divorce is used often, what does it mean? It means end of marriage. It also means freedom from a painful relationship. It also means freedom to find a new partner and start life afresh. It also means a second chance. It also means custody issues. It also means custody battles. So, all of these things come with divorce. But when you talk about divorce in a culture where it is not so rampant, or in a culture that doesn't use that as just recently started using the word divorce, all these things need some thinking. They do not come to them automatically. And then it means breaking of marriage. It doesn't mean a happy event. Divorce is never a happy event, but still it doesn't mean a happy event. But cultures that have been using the word divorce has now reached a stage of maturity, and people actually see it as an opportunity to restart their life again. That is nothing right or wrong about these two interpretations. How we interpret this same thing will depend on what our culture is made up of, or how our culture views different things. So that is what Sapir-Whorf hypothesis does to the way we think about things, and that is the application in any organization. When we introduce new concepts like I told you about ERP, people who are familiar with the enterprise resource planning will see it differently. People who are not familiar with enterprise resource planning will find it hard to cross the concept and get used to using the ERP system. And that is how it limits what we think about and what we ultimately talk about. And then slowly, when we take these words into our vocabulary, we start thinking, we start processing them, we start thinking about these things differently, more maturely, in a more evolved manner. Okay, so I have some questions for you now. If you are listening to me and if you are in a real class, this is what I would like you to discuss. Think about how each of the styles of learning in problem solving mentioned in the previous slides influence your work as a manager. Think about sorry think about how knowledge of each of these styles would help your subordinates and understand your superiors. How knowledge of each of these styles would help your subordinates and understand your superiors. So discuss these things and then go on to the next part of this presentation. We are talking about thought and speech in intercultural communication. And the next part here that I would like to talk about is the tension between thought and speech. What we think and think about influences what we speak. Another difficult concept, another more complex for you. It is not as complicated. What we think and what we think about, how we think about things will influence what we say. Now, uh, what is this in turn influenced by the expectations of others in our environments, influence what we think and in turn what we speak about. It is not only me. Till now, we were just talking about ourselves. Now, there is one more added will, or there is another added element, which is the other people in our environments. What do they expect us to say? What do they want us to say? What do they think we will say? Will greatly influence what we say, because we are thinking about the response we want from them. So I have to say things one that they will understand and are familiar with. Two things familiar with the two things that will be acceptable to them, and if they are not, then I have to convince them that whatever I am saying will have to make sense to you. And the other thing is our expectations from ourselves in relation to the others in our environments influence what we think and what we speak about. So it is the expectations that others have from me, and it is the expectations that I have from myself as a part of this environment. Some more complications has been introduced. It is not only uh, what others think I am or how I fit into my environment. It is also how I want to fit into my environment, whether others like it or not. My perception about myself, my expectations from myself in relation to the others in my environment, where do I think I fit in, where do I think I want to fit in, will determine what we think about and what we speak about. So, some levels of action in a dialogue. Now let us spend a little bit of time on this, the coherence between dialogue and actions. That refers to developing capacity for new behavior, which puts us in a position to resolve incoherence and produce effects we intend. Again, something that sounds slightly complicated, but it is not. We are talking about thought and speech. We are talking about the tensions between thought and speech. We are talking about what dictates or what changes when we think, when we speak different things. And we need to be coherent between what we say and we are thinking about. We need to be coherent between, we need to develop a capacity for new behavior, which puts us in a position to resolve incoherence. So, if you are sounding incoherent, then we need to think. We need to talk to ourselves and we need to figure out how we can resolve this incoherence and produce the effects we intend. We have to develop a capacity to become more and more coherent with what we say. Our thoughts and actions need to match up. So it is thought action, thought speech, and action. So it is thought, action, or thought, speech, and action. What I think about has to match up with what I say, has to match up with what I do. It is three things now I supposed to do, and what I do is what people see, what I say is what people hear, what people do not know is what is going on in here. But if you had enough experience dealing with people, but if you have seen enough people, you will know that people who are more experienced, or you will know that you will be able to identify the disconnect between what people say and what people do, and what people think about. It comes with practice, it comes with age, it comes with experience. So that is coherence. The second point here is creation of fluid structures of interaction, which means an open platform for speaking, an open platform for interacting with people. Okay, an open platform for speaking, an open platform for interacting with people. Okay, so that is creation of fluid structures of interaction. Developing predictive intuition, which means the ability to seek subtextual forces, to see subtextual forces more clearly, enabling us to liberate stuck structures of interaction. Again, this sounds very complicated, but is not. After we have interacted enough, we developed the ability to see these forces that act, the underlying forces that act on this receiver and the sender of the message and shape what they say. And this is what we are able to see. We develop intuition, and this helps us liberate structures of interaction. So we said we create, we develop new patterns of thought, we develop a capacity for new behavior. When we talk about developing predictive intuition, we are essentially talking about the newer ways or more fluid ways of interacting, freeing energy, just letting the energy flow in our interaction and promote a more fluid means of thinking and working together, being able to understand what the other person is saying and what the other person is doing, what the other person wants us to do, what the other person is keen on saying and doing, and we come up with these are more free flow of information, of energy, of dialogue. We are talking about dialogue, and so this is what the dialogue does. By talking to each other, by giving each other feedback, by responding to each other, we free this energy, we come out of our comfort zones and these stuck patterns of interaction, and depending on the feedback we get from our environments, we shape our future interactions and develop a certain level of comfort with the people we are dealing with. Okay, so the third point here is provision of wholesome space, provision of wholesome space for dialogue, another slightly more complicated concept. When we talk about wholesome space, we are essentially referring to the space that people come from, and this space or the context is composed of the habits of thought and quality of attention that people bring to any interaction. So, how we have been thinking about things defines our space, our habits, the depths to which we go to when we discuss things. Okay, how we have been thinking about things defines our space, our habits, the depths to which we go to when we discuss things. Okay, the manner in which we solve problems is shaped by how we think about these problems, and that in turn shapes how we talk to the people we are in a dialogue with, and that dialogue then further gives us feedback which helps us revise this notion of the wholesome space, and that helps us redefine the space that we are coming from. So that is another aspect that ultimately ends up defining how we think and how we speak and the kinds of messages we send into our environment. So we come to the last part of today's lecture, and this is the dialogues. This is the basic tensions in any dialogue, and there are two of them, as Zediker and Stewart have pointed out. The first one is letting the other happens to me. Hmm? Letting the other happen to me. When we are talking to people, we are talking about dialogue. Now we are talking about thought and speech, and how they influence what we talk about, and we let the other happen to us, which means we let the otherness of the other person influence us, sounds more complicated. You let someone happen to you when you allow who they are, especially especially if their differences from you to touch, connect with and influence you. I am influenced by what people are like. I am influenced by the characteristics of the people in my environment. Where I am teaching in a class, I am influenced by the Maharashtrian people use. I am influenced by what they wear. I am influenced by a kind of interaction they bring to class. When I go and speak to my boss, if he's not looking at me, I get very uncomfortable. We have these experiences. So, my or if I'm talking to somebody, if I walk into a colleague's office and he's not dressed appropriately, or is not wearing iron clothes, or I mean, these are simple things at the very surface. Or when I walk into my colleague's office and the colleague has a pile of papers on his desk and is trying to talk to me from behind those papers, I'm influenced by what the manner in which my colleague keeps his office space. I'm influenced by the manner in which my colleagues treat me. I'm influenced by the manner in which my colleagues treat their own environment. So, that is the otherness of the other. There is no direct influence, but I am still being influenced. I am being influenced by the language that my colleagues use. I am influenced by the language my students use, whether they are talking to me or not. It is the otherness of the other, as Levinas puts it. So, you let someone happen to you when you allow who they are, especially their differences from you. If I am not aggressive, but the person I am talking to is very, very aggressive in his or her approach, just generally aggressive, it will make me more agitated, whether I like it or not. That is what we are talking about here. If the person I am dealing with is very, very professional, very, very competent, very punctual, it will impact how I think about things, whether I like it or not. It is the otherness of the other, the characteristics of the person I am talking to, that will influence the way I think about myself, the environment, my role in that environment. I will start thinking, oh my god, so and so and so systematic. I'm not, how will I manage? So, that is what we say when we talk about letting the other happen to us. The other thing at the other end of this continuum is maintaining my ground. Yes, I'm influenced by people around me, but I have myself, hold on, but I also have myself. I'm a person in my own right. I'm a person in my own right, and so I stick to my guns. I simply think about the situation in relation to myself. Yes, the other person is an integral part of the situation, but so am I. And I have my own characteristics and my own beliefs and my own understanding of the situation, and I evaluate the situation in terms of my thoughts, in terms of whether they are disagreeable, refreshing, or misinterpreting, misrepresenting disagreeable thoughts. If uttering them might, if uttering them might have negative consequences, but otherwise saying what comes to my mind. So I am influenced by my own thoughts. I am influenced by this tension of the otherness of the other, impinging on who I am. I should not get aggressive take if I am talking to an aggressive colleague. I should not get aggressive if I am talking to an aggressive colleague. I should not become aggressive, but I do, and that hurts me internally. And I'm like, no, why should I? Or if I see a person who disorganized, I come back to my office and I say, I think that maybe yes, and I think that maybe yes. So and so is getting his or her work done despite the disorganization. And then I start debating, but I'm not like that. I need to do things differently. So these two things pull us in different directions, and the more different people are from us, the more these tensions are. So I want you to think about these things, and we will discuss them in greater detail in next class. Okay, but there are some things that I would like you to mull over, to think about before you come to the next class. I want you to think about what your environment, what is there in your environment that influences how you think about your environment. your own individual environments. I also want you to find out if you ever feel the need, feel the tension between doing something because you are expected to be doing it and doing something because you are convinced that it should be done. We have those tensions, and whenever you face such an attention, I want you to identify the differences in the manner in which you think and talk about these situations. And I want you to think about how interaction with people and situations you are not familiar with might influence the manner in which you think and speak about such situations and why this may happen. Think about these things, and I will meet you in the next class. Till then, thank you.